here saying multiple B-2 bombers have taken off from Whiteman Air Force Base. The Air and Space Forces magazine has confirmed that the B-2s are now flying over the Pacific, and the mission comes as President Donald Trump weighs whether to join Israel's air campaign against Iran. Now, this post courtesy of Chris Gordon, who is a reporter for Air and Space Forces magazine, and he joins us now. Chris, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Let's start with the fact that just today you published that article discussing these B-2 bombers that are heading there west. Now, what did you learn through your reporting?
Well, what we know so far is that multiple B-2 bombers took off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri overnight. The Pentagon won't talk about the mission on the record, but this deployment of these bombers is exactly the sort of thing the military would do if it wanted to move B-2s, the stealth bomber, closer to Iran so that it could attack on short notice and not under the watchful eye of flight trackers, reporters, and the like. There's some speculation that they're heading to Guam, and we know they're over the Pacific right now. The significance of the B-2s themselves are they're the only aircraft capable of carrying the so-called bunker buster, this large 30,000-pound bomb that would be needed against the heavily defended Iranian nuclear site, Fordo, which the Israelis may be able to attack it themselves, but most analysts believe if a successful attack would have to be launched using this type of plane and this type of weapon. But we don't know what exactly the B-2's mission will be.
And I'm wondering, Chris, just for a little bit more context, when was the last time that we saw these B-2 bombers being used?
Well, actually quite recently, and perhaps in a signal to Iran. They were deployed in late March to early May to the island of, 6 of them, to the island of Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, a joint U.S.-UK outpost. And they conducted strikes against the Houthi militants in Yemen before the U.S. Reached a ceasefire with the group. The Houthis are an Iranian-backed group, and the bombing campaign was intensive, involving a lot of U.S. planes from aircraft carriers, ground-based planes. The use of the B-2s was certainly a show of force, not just aimed at the Houthis, but perhaps at Iran, which supports that group.
And you spoke a little bit about it at the top of our discussion here, but can you go more in depth into the strategy and the goal if President Trump were to launch a direct attack against Iran? Again, nothing confirmed, but we have been seeing some movement on this front.
Right. U.S. officials for now have stressed all the U.S. actions and deployments have been defensive. We've seen additional fighter jets, F-16s, F-35s, soon to be F-22s from the Air Force come in, the USS Nimitz aircraft carriers coming in. And we know these have, the U.S. has used planes to defeat Iranian drones headed towards Israel, according to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And we know also he says that U.S. Anti-missile systems on ships and ground-based ones have been used to shoot down missiles headed towards Israel. So the U.S. has been in a defensive mode now. It helped defend Israel from attacks from Iran last October and last April as well. But these bombers, if they were to be used, again, it's for that unique capability of the bunker-busting weapon would be their likely use. But it would have to, you'd truck more than one. There'd have to be more than one bomber, likely part of a broader strike. And of course, it would be a significant decision if President Trump does decide to intervene offensively with the Israelis against Iran.
Now, President Trump has stressed that a ground offensive involving U.S. military is not something that he even wants to think about or discuss at this time. But Chris, what do we know about U.S. troops and their placement around the Middle East? And what steps have been taken to ensure that those bases do remain protected?
Well, the U.S. has many bases in the Middle East and some delicate diplomatic arrangements. There are about 40,000 U.S. troops in the Middle East. The U.S. military has moved some aircraft away from Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, which is located just across the Persian Gulf from Iran. That's the main U.S. base in the Middle East, houses the headquarters for U.S. Central Command, the command which oversees the Middle East, and it's a large air base. They've taken some planes out of there, moved them out of harm's way. They've said they are, taking force protection measures, making sure everyone knows where the bunkers are. And this is not a new threat that Iran has many missiles, not necessarily fired at U.S. bases, but as proxy groups have fired at U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria. And we know tragically last year in Jordan, killing the 3 troops with a drone. So it's not, we haven't seen quite this tension before, but the U.S. is well aware of the Iranian threat from missiles and drones, and appears to be taking actions to ensure that U.S. troops are as best protected as they can be.
Later on today, we have been reporting extensively that President Trump is going to be meeting with his national security team to get a briefing on some of this conflict between Israel and Iran. What do you have your eye on regarding that meeting? What are you hoping to learn? What can we even expect to learn?
Well, it's a bit unclear. President Trump has suggested that 2 months is the maximum time he would allow, as he said, to allow Iran to come to their senses, I believe in his words. So we really don't know. The bomber placement will, the Air Force can act with these bombers in a matter of hours if President Trump decides to strike Iran. These military has plans for everything. Even if a crisis boils up, it's likely someone has thought through how U.S. forces might be used against Iran if necessary, or if the president orders that action. So it's really a wait and see, and I think the president himself has said it's a wait and see. He'd like to see Iran unconditional surrender, as he's put it, from Iran, give up their nuclear program. Iran has rebuffed that. Iran remains to be, it's in President Trump's hands on what he may decide to do. And there are a number of options he could take. It's not just on-off whether the B-2s are used. U.S. refueling planes could support Israeli aircraft, and Pentagon has a number of options, and it's ultimately up to President Trump.